we've got a really insightful session lined up for you today. We're going to be joined by some of our Get My First Job female ambassadors who are currently doing an apprenticeship in technology, as well as someone from Firebrand, who are a training provider, to talk about the qualification side of an apprenticeship. We'll also have people from the Get My First Job talent team who will be giving you some support and guidance to get you through your application journey when you finally get to it. Throughout this event, we're going to be having very open and honest conversations around kind of what an apprenticeship is really like. We've got kind of people who are in the thick of it, so they can give you kind of a first-hand idea of what an apprenticeship could be like. So please feel free to ask any questions that you may have. So this is the introduction at the moment. Then we're going to be talking about what an apprenticeship is. So an overview of the different levels you can do and what kind of the requirements are. Then we move on to the ambassador Q&A panel. So this is where our lovely ambassadors will be answering all your burning questions. We'll then move on to a session around what the routes are into technology, so the different careers that you could go into. And this is where we'll be having a talk from Tracy from Firebrand to talk about the role a training provider plays within your apprenticeship. Then we'll move on to a support and guidance session. So this will be led by the GMFJ talent team, and that they'll talk through kind of application hints and tips, interview hints and tips, just to give you kind of a bit of upskilling ahead of any interviews or applications you may be doing. And then finally, we'll have a Q&A. So any questions that haven't been answered across all the sessions, we'll get to in this final bit. And then hopefully we should be all done and dusted by 6:30. So what is an apprenticeship? That's the main question. So in a nutshell, an apprenticeship is a full-time role where you can gain a qualification whilst working. At least 20% of the time is spent learning the knowledge or the theories of that kind of underpins that apprenticeship or the qualification that you're doing. The rest of the time is spent in the working environment. So this is far more than just work experience. It's a proper job with a proper salary that will develop the many skills you need to be in order to be successful in your career. So apprenticeships are a useful way of doing a few things. So first of all, gaining specific training for the job roles you want, either now or in the future. Learning and getting a qualification without any debt attached. Getting paid a salary while studying and gaining practical experience. So this is really useful. It's really unique, whereas with university, you might go and do your degree and you've got that qualification there, but you don't necessarily have that practical experience. Whereas one thing that an apprenticeship is really great at is giving you that kind of that qualification and the learning and the knowledge there, but also applying that in real life experience and in a work setting. And then finally, developing your career prospects. So again, kind of getting on the ladder and putting you on the path to success. In recent years, there's been many changes to the way in which apprenticeships work and the range of occupations they cover as well. So in the past, they've been seen more of kind of a vocational route, but now they cover an increasingly wide range of occupations, including engineering, IT, supply chain, marketing, business, law. There's so many different occupations, and that's just a small number of what is on offer. As well as the roles traditionally associated with apprenticeships, today's opportunities offer a genuine alternative route to university. So it's really important to understand the wide range of apprenticeships are available and the benefits they offer to make sure you are choosing the right path for you. The levels, so kind of what qualifications can you do? These range anywhere from a level 2, which is the equivalent of GCSEs, to a level 7, which is the equivalent to a master's degree. You can either work your way through them, kind of leveling up each time, or you can simply start from kind of whichever you most qualify for at that time. So, for example, if you've done your GCSEs, then you'd be looking to maybe do a level 3 to kind of upskill yourself. In a very kind of in a nutshell, your level 2 are the equivalent of 5 GCSEs. So you could gain something like a level 2 MBQ or BTEC. A level 3 is the equivalent to 2 good A-level passes. So again, you could gain something like a level 3 MBQ or BTEC. Level 4 are the equivalent to a first year at university or a level 4 MBQ or BTEC. Level 5 is equivalent to level 5 MBQ or BTEC, but also a foundation degree or your second year of university. Level 6 is the equivalent to a BA or a BSc degree or graduate certificate, and then a level 6 MBQ or BTEC. And then finally, your level 7, oh, sorry. Oh no. Sorry, technical issues. Finally, level 7 is the equivalent to a master's degree or a kind of a postgraduate certificate or a level 7 MBQ. So quite a lot of different options there, depending on what route you want to take. With those qualifications, you'll gain most of the training you need in the workplace. You'll go to either college or university, you'll learn online or have a training provider to gain those vital skills and qualifications for the role that you're doing. All of the training that you have will be designed kind of within kind of standard framework, but also with your new employer. So it means that every apprenticeship is different. Whatever you pick, however, it will be it'll be challenging, it'll be stimulating, it'll be varied. So it gives you a really good idea of what you can do and what you can grow into. There are, I think, over about 600 types of apprenticeships you can do across hundreds of different employers, with loads more in development as well. So it's really just about finding the right one for you.
Right, okay. So my name's Josh. I'm the social media executive here at GetMyFirstJob. Now you're probably wondering, first of all, I don't work in tech, and secondly, I'm not a woman, or at least I don't think I am. But I'm very happy to be leading this panel and passing you off onto people that definitely know this industry best and have the experience to be able to answer all of your questions. So firstly, we have Chanel Barant. She's a solution engineer from Salesforce. Vivian Samola, who's a software engineering apprentice at Vodafone. And then also Zoya Latia, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that surname, a cross-functional degree apprentice at Cisco. So thank you so much, guys, for being here. So firstly, we have some questions coming in, but we also have some ready and prepared as well. So firstly, maybe we'll have like a little look at some of the challenges that you might have faced coming into the industry. It's often said that it's a very male-dominated industry. There's a bit of a glass ceiling. So I'm quite curious to see whether any of you have had to overcome any barriers, adversities, or challenges when getting into tech as a woman. So Chanel, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. So when I actually started applying for this apprenticeship, I had the experience where a lot of the people that were applying were actually female, and we had some male candidates as well. Having got the apprenticeship, actually a lot of us are female, and then I'd say 40% of us are male. So that was actually quite positive. And also I think it reflects the company that I work for as well. So a lot of companies will have things like ERG groups, which means that they're kind of equality groups within the company. The one that we have at Salesforce is the Salesforce Women's Network. So I joined that straight away because I kind of wanted to connect with other women that were in the company, that were in different roles, share experiences as well. So fortunately, I've not come across any sort of adversity. And I actually, when I started, both my managers were female, so that was also positive, just to see like female role models as well. So yeah.
So how about you, Zoya and Vivian? Would you relate to this? Do you have anything else to add on the back of that?
I think I sort of had a bit of maybe a similar experience when applying. Mine was virtual, so I couldn't really see everyone, but people in my assessment center group, they were all female. And also my program is quite diverse in terms of gender. However, it's not really the same sort of aspect once you're in the wider company. But I do feel like we do have that support, but I'm not sure, maybe Vivian have a different aspect.
Yeah, I was quite similar. I think like what mine was is just trying to make more female friends in such a male-dominated sector, you see. So and a lot of things were virtual. So it was, especially when I applied in the beginning, when I applied in the beginning, I was just trying to like see like all the other females I could relate to as well, since you're so dominated. So I actually had females reach out to me as well to see like, oh, hello, like, you know, we're not alone in this place. So yeah, it's just the fact that it was virtual, it's just hard to see more people and stuff, but it gets easier along the way and we do get that support eventually. Yeah.
Great, that sounds great. It sounds like community is really important then, and being able to not just like progress yourself, but then also raise up everybody else with you. So great, great answers. Thank you. We have an interesting question from Samia in the comments, so thank you for that. It is, do you feel like you have to do more work to get recognized or do more things in general within the kind of industry or company that you work at? And I suppose that's in relation to men, or maybe even like people in senior positions. So I guess we can go back to you, Chanel.
Yeah, sure. So I think it depends on the type of people that you have that are surrounding you and the network that you build up around yourself. Because, you know, for me, my personality is that I'll do a little bit too much work sometimes, and I'll step out of what I've been asked to do. So that's more of a personal thing. Who knows, that might be down to the fact of the way that society is and the way that I've been brought up. But I guess in that sense, yeah, I do work a little bit extra and do more, but it's about kind of putting yourself out there too and being your own advocate. So, you know, shouting out about the things that you've done and not really kind of being quiet, because you might find that some people that are maybe the opposite gender, they will be happy to talk about their achievements and they'll do it normally. But myself, I find it quite awkward to do that, but I've learned that that's something that you've got to do for yourself, because if you don't, then other people won't know about the stuff you're doing and they can't talk about how amazing you are. So yeah, like I said at the start, it's about the network you have around you, talking about yourself and having people that will advocate for you as well. So that's my experience. Don't know about you, Zoya.
Yeah, I think that's also like a really good question too. I think as of right now, I don't really necessarily feel like I need to do more, just because very lucky in the sense of that my apprenticeship program is very diverse. But I do know once I leave that program, it's not going to be as diverse. You know, being a woman, especially like a woman of color too, you're always going to have to work harder. So it's always something that I know, you know, not necessarily in the back of my mind. It's always there that you're always going to have to, you know, work harder to get recognized or to be put on the same sort of level as your you know, other counterparts, right? So I think that is something that unfortunately is just the way that it is, or even though it shouldn't be. But I think, you know, it's changing a bit more. And, you know, I think, as was mentioned, is just sort of training yourself to sort of essentially not show off, but show yourself. And like was mentioned, like, I think it's just a way that, you know, we're sort of brought up or conditioned as females to not really brag and stuff like that. But I think that's also something, like it was mentioned, you have to learn how to do. But yeah, Vivian, you?
Yeah, I agree. I do feel like, just to answer your question, there's actually plenty of opportunities here, especially at Vodafone, to speak about and get recognized. Like right now, we're doing our third quarter, what do you call it? Recognition. So you kind of recognize people in the business and different type of people. So I have an apprentice, a graduate, and a full-time worker. So like just recognize different type of people within the business for what they've done through each quarter of the year. And right now we're doing the third final one for this year. And I've actually never kind of put myself forward for these things because like I was kind of, I don't know, just I know it's so easy to get shy and like not want to like talk about the things you've done, but there's a lot of encouragement saying, oh, I've seen you do X, Y, and Z, I've seen you engage in this, I think you should put yourself forward. And they do encourage a lot of people to speak up. There's loads of opportunities to get recognized. I think people even like just give you like bonuses, or like there's an opportunity to get like bonuses if you go up and beyond. There's stuff like promotions are always there, like even as an apprentice, if you're doing more up and beyond for what you're doing, your manager could like recognize stuff like that and in the future would work in your favor, you know. So yeah, they do encourage that.
Great, sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And then also a final question on this kind of theme before we move on to different areas. Huda, thank you for the question, has a really good one as well. And it kind of touches on that topic of imposter syndrome. Have either three of you kind of faced that when going into your apprenticeship, being as like quote unquote being a minority in a male dominated industry? So I'll kind of open the floor on that one.
So in my experience, yeah, 100%. So when I was applying for tech apprenticeships, I'd never done technology before, any related like computer science, for example. So it was a little bit daunting because I was like, oh, well, first of all, I've got no experience about technology and who am I to apply for a technology apprenticeship, right? But as I went through it, and even through the assessment center, when I was with people that had experience beforehand, I kept saying to myself, like, oh, I'm not going to get this because I didn't have any tech experience. But obviously I'm at a position now where I'm doing really well in my apprenticeship and I've learned on the job. But there are still times where I'll feel imposter syndrome because there are lots of different things that I may not feel an expert at, but it's kind of acknowledging the feelings that you're having about yourself and then, you know, saying, well, actually, how realistic is this? You don't really need to know every single thing or be the expert at everything. But yeah, I think, you know, having those conversations with other females as well about their experiences, it makes you feel a little bit, you know, like you're not the only person that has imposter syndrome. And I'd say, especially at like big tech companies where you'll find people that are super, super intelligent and it seems like they know everything. So I feel like there might always be imposter syndrome. It's just kind of how do you acknowledge it? And, you know, don't feel so bad about it either. So yeah, that's my experience.
How about you, Vivian and Zoya? Do you have anything to add to that as well?
Yeah, I think for me, yeah, I think it's always like maybe a bit low-key, like always there. But I think that's also maybe my personality being a bit shy too, just it comes from that. But I think also I joined this apprenticeship when I was 18, so after sixth form. So I think that contributed more to it because there were other people in my team, you know, non-apprentices to just who are much older, and it's that idea of like, you know, older and experienced. So I think it's, you know, I'm in my second year now, so it's sort of gone away a bit, but it's still there. I think it's definitely, yeah, just I think it's something that just goes away a bit more with experience and a bit more with familiarity. You know, that I think the longer I'm in my rotation that I'm in, the more confident you get. And we do have sessions, you know, in Cisco, we have like a Women of Cisco group, and they actually did run like imposter syndrome sessions, like how to get over it. But yeah, and I'm not sure about you, Vivian.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree as well that I experience imposter syndrome all the time. Like it happens, and I don't think it's ever going to go away for me, but I have like ways that help me not let it impact me in a negative way, because I think um I've noticed like also like being like a software engineer and like still learning how to code, and having a lot more people who are way more experienced than me out, I'm always going to remember this people going to be better than me regardless. And so I think having like personal projects for me and like work on a specific project help me focus more on my strengths and focus more on what I want to make and the outcome of what I want to do, rather than thinking about other people around me. And like just that's what helped me personally. So yeah, it doesn't dominate my thoughts as much anymore. So yeah.
So off the back of that, in terms of speaking about like personal projects and different tasks that you'll be doing in the day-to-day, what would you guys say are the main skills that are kind of needed to break into tech? Obviously, coding might be a really big one, but are there any other kind of underrated skills that you feel might be kind of easily overlooked as well that could be useful for people to know?
From my experience, I'd probably say curiosity is a really big one. So making sure that you're actually curious about things, you want to learn new things, you want to ask questions. You're that person that's in class that put your hand up and actually questions why. I'd say that's a really big one, because even if you haven't got coding skills and you're going into a tech apprenticeship, if you're curious, you'll be willing to learn, and then as long as you try, that's the most important thing. You'll have that support around you to ask questions and get the help that you need. So I'd say curiosity is a really big one, and willingness to learn, and also resilience as well. That's a really big one, because when you're working with customers, you might not always know the answer to everything, but as long as you're resilient and you try hard, then you're definitely on the way to succeeding in tech.
Would either of you agree with that, Vivian or Zoya?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that too. Because I like, you would hear people say all the time, ask questions, but I know there's this little stigma that you could annoy people, be too dependent, and be like, this is this negative thing about asking questions. But I know in my team, like, they get worried when I'm silent. Like we even concerned, do you want to learn? Like they want to help you. Like it's like, and I think asking questions and reaching out when you're genuinely confused would be the best way forward to even improve your learning as well. And like not being in silent. That's I wish like I actually knew it wasn't actually a big problem. Yeah.
I would say for me, maybe some skills that you need to break into tech. I think it very much depends on the apprenticeship you're applying to. Unfortunately, some do require technical experience or a certain set of skills, but some don't. And I do think, motivation to learn is like a very big one too. But I wouldn't say, in my experience, I think coding is important if you're applying to like software engineering. From the ones that I applied to, they did require like coding skills, and I think it would just vary on like what level they want depending on the company. And I noticed that sometimes some of the bigger companies ask for a bit more, probably because they're in that position too, because they're a big company and people with more skills will take that role, for example. But I would say if you don't have coding skills, don't worry, especially if it's not what you want to do. But yeah, mainly motivation to learn. And I think if you don't have skills, my recommendation is just to do like a bunch of courses around what you want to do. So at least it shows your knowledge, even if you can't, for example, if you're interested in coding, if you don't know how to code, like, I don't know, like an API, do APIs and all the sort of websites, if you have that sort of thing on your CV, like a course just to show that, I think it will also help you a bit more, maybe with some imposter syndrome too, to feel like you belong a bit more. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's really great advice, actually. being proactive in kind of like showing your passion might give you the first stepping stone that you need. So great advice. Thank you, guys. We're having a few different comments now, just in terms of people sharing their own backgrounds and kind of wondering what backgrounds you guys came from in terms of like what you were doing before, potentially what you were studying and how you kind of ended up in the roles that you're in now. So it might be quite useful to provide that context. So we'll start with you, Chanel.
Okay, so I did my GCSEs, and then I did A-levels after that. I did 3 A-levels, so business studies, English literature, and sociology. So actually, it might be worth mentioning, when I was in secondary school, we were all kind of forced to do an ICT GCSE when we were in year 9 or year 10. It was a bit random, but so yeah, we also did that. But I achieved BBC with my A-levels, and I believe the entry requirements typically will be like 120 UCAS points, possibly. And then after my A-levels, I did a year in university, but I did a foundation degree. So that's the year just before your first year. And the reason I did that mainly was because I wanted to get a qualification and also experience university and see whether it was for me. But that time also gave me enough time to apply for more apprenticeships. So yeah, that was mainly my background. And then the apprenticeship that I do now is digital and technology solutions, and I do the tech consultant pathway. So as Zoya mentioned before, there are different apprenticeships and degree apprenticeships that you'll apply for. So for me, because it's a tech consultant pathway and not software development, we didn't need any, I guess, STEM subjects either. So yeah, so that's worth mentioning. I'll pass on to Zoya.
Yeah, so my background was GCSEs, then on to A-levels. A-levels I did were sociology, psychology, and computer science, which is a bit of an odd mix, I know, but my interest was computer science. And then I applied to a bunch of apprenticeships, but I also applied to uni. My main goal was apprenticeship, but my backup choice were my university places. But yeah, so yeah, after finished A-levels, I joined Cisco, and I'm also on the digital and technology solutions degree. I haven't chosen my pathway yet, and I think most people who do technology would do that same degree. But yeah, that is my background. I think that's what the question was. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Vivian?
Hello. So I studied extended computer science and graphics communications. So the extended computer science was a BTEC, equivalent to like 3 A-levels, I think, and graphics was its own A-level. It was a little bit confusing with the college I went to, but that's what I ended up doing when I was in college. I studied computer science in secondary school as my GCSE. At the time, classrooms were really small, and I think so it wasn't really a popular subject at the time, but I'm glad I picked it. And now I am doing the same thing as you see, the digital and technology solutions as a software engineering pathway for me. So yeah.
Good answers, guys. I think what I'm kind of gathering from that is that there's not one specific route into tech, and people with like different diverse backgrounds can actually like find a route into tech. You just need to try and figure out what path is best for you. So that sounds really inspiring. Thank you all. We have lots more questions. Suppose we've already spoken about the sort of how you've managed to get into tech, but I suppose another one we could ask is potentially the why. So like what's kind of attracted you to the industry? Has it kind of met your expectations? Potentially, what sort of advice would you give to the version of yourself applying now? That's quite a loaded one, but I'll hand it over to Zoya first.
Could you repeat the first part of the question, please, if you don't mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, suppose what attracted you to the industry?
I don't really know. I think technology has always just been my interest. I don't think I could say why. I think I just, liked the opportunities that there's like endless opportunities with technology, right? You can pretty much do anything. And also, that it's a very in-demand job area, in some specifics, for example, like cybersecurity, and there's going to be a lot of job demand and high pay. So that helped. And sorry, the second part of the question again?
Oh, I suppose, even I'm forgetting my own question now, but I suppose it was what kind of attracted you into the industry, and maybe how it's sort of been for you against any sort of preconceived notions that you might have had. Has it kind of lived up to your expectations?
I think it has, but at the same time, it sort of hasn't, but in a good sense, because I joined from school, and school is once you leave school, you're like, I can't believe I was raising my hand to go to the bathroom, having to ask permission. It's very it's sort of like a dystopian thing when you think about it. And, you refer to teachers. I mean, I went to sixth form, right? Maybe college it changes, but you refer to teachers by like Mr. or Miss and all that sort of stuff. And when you come into the working environment, it's completely different. And there isn't, at least in my company, that sort of hierarchical aspect of it. So I think it definitely I wasn't prepared for that, but it turned out to be a good thing. And I think there's just a lot of things I've learned about the working environment and culture that I wouldn't have guessed before. But yeah, I guess it's met my expectations in a good way.
Nice. And then maybe to the Vivian and Chanel as well. Sort of now that you're into your apprenticeship, you're hopefully on the successful route to what you're pursuing in the future. Is there any sort of retrospective advice that you would give yourself now, knowing things that you hadn't done before when applying for apprenticeship?
So for myself, when I first started applying for apprenticeships, I was only applying for business management apprenticeships. So when I was in year 13, it was all just business management because that's all I knew. And I kind of underestimated the transferable skills that I'd built up to apply for a tech apprenticeship, for example. So looking back, I probably would have applied for tech apprenticeships much earlier on rather than when I was in university that first year. I was lucky enough that I'd connected with someone at Salesforce who was able to actually mentor me and say, look, these are transferable skills that you've got, you should apply for a tech role. So my advice would be, don't underestimate yourself and the transferable skills that you have. I would highly recommend that each of you go and have a look at what transferable skills are and how they relate to different apprenticeships, because you might surprise yourself. So that's my advice I would give to myself in year 13.
You, Vivian?
Yeah, to kind of put myself out my comfort zone a little bit, because why I don't put so much emphasis on technical skills, because I'm always willing to learn. I think a lot of companies want you to be willing to learn, but I wish I kind of just deep dived a little bit more into things that I thought were kind of out of my league, and a bit, I put some things on a pedestal for me, and I don't think I should have. I just out of curiosity, I just thought I should have pushed myself a little bit more with technical projects, coding, and seeing other languages and stuff. I feel like I was a bit comfortable with my little area that I thought I just want to develop on. So I think that's pretty much it for me.
Great, thanks. Then also on the topic of coding, I suppose, there is a bit of a myth about the industry. So maybe we can even clear it up today. Do you have to code to be in tech? I'm seeing heads shaking. Who wants to take the floor?
I could say in the company that I'm in, no, you don't need to. You can be in tech and be in a role that I'm in, and you can learn as well at companies. I think a lot of people just expect that they have to know how to code to get into maybe a consultant role, for example, but companies will also help educate you, and you can always learn, and they'll pay for you to learn as well, so you have that opportunity. But yeah, for my role, you don't need to. If you really wanted to get into a role within Salesforce, it's more technical and you're actually doing coding because you really enjoy it, then you can always apply for roles like that. But there are roles where you're working with technology that you don't require coding and it's quite declarative. So in my experience, no.
Yeah, I would say the same thing too. Like, I think people don't know that project management is a tech role too in the tech industry. Like, that's a stream that they do have. Vodafone, there's some apprentices that do that, and that's absolutely a tech role. So there's a lot of, misconception what a tech role could look like too. Yeah.
Then I suppose maybe you could help with answering this one first as well, Zoya. In there is a bit of a misconception that work-life balance is like a massive struggle. Maybe it's not a misconception, and maybe it's 100% true. When working in tech, what have your experiences been like in kind of juggling your apprenticeship and then also finding that right balance?
I would say there hasn't really been a struggle for that balance. I think employers nowadays, at least from my experience, working with Cisco, there's a big emphasis on like work-life balance and essentially like leaving work in the office. Let's just assume, you're going into the office, right? But and honestly, most days I don't really even work till like 5:30, which is what I'm meant to, because at least in Cisco, it's less about the hours you work and working like strictly 9 to like 5:30, but more so about, just doing your work. And if you're able to get it done, you got it done, that sort of aspect of it. So I think it definitely helps with like the work-life balance. I think maybe the only thing is there's a work-life balance and there's like a uni life balance. So I would say if you do a non-degree apprenticeship, like obviously a degree apprenticeship is just going to be more work, right? Not saying it's not achievable. We're all here, right? We're all going strong. And not saying that non-degree apprenticeships don't require work too, right? But obviously a degree is going to require a lot of work. And I think sometimes that is a bit, where there's like a bit more crossover, but that's not necessarily got to do with the job. It's more the university aspect. And even if you do the traditional uni route, it's going to be like that, because like with uni, there isn't really like a 9 to 5. You just get your assignment done. But that's really, I really feel that more so in the deadline aspect of the uni work. So, the start of the modules, maybe a bit more that away from the start, like around the middle sort of stuff. You're not really like, let's say for example, doing your work on the weekend, but towards a deadline you do sort of work on the weekend. But that's my experience, and I will feel like I'm saying if you do want to do a degree apprenticeship, just keep that in mind. But again, it's not like unachievable. We're all here, like I said, and people have graduated and don't have that imposter syndrome. If anyone else can do it, like, so can you. But yeah.
Great, sounds amazing. I think maybe we have enough time for 2 more questions. So the second last one, maybe for Chanel and Vivian, what have you found have been the most rewarding things, and then also the most stressful and most difficult things about working in tech since you started? It's a pretty loaded one.
Yeah, that's okay. I think something that has been the most, I guess, amazing thing about working in tech as an apprentice as well is how much trust I've been able to have with the people that I work with and the customers. So part of my role is going to customer meetings and talking to them about what are their problems at the moment with their technology, what technology do they have, and just asking them loads of questions, hence the importance of curiosity. So that's one part of my role. And then another part is looking back at all the answers I got and presenting them with a solution that is fitted for their business through storytelling. So I'd say most recently I worked with a apprenticeship provider who had problems with their technology. They wanted to scale as a business. And I actually got the opportunity to talk to them about what are some of the challenges they're having. It was quite interesting because I've only had the experience as an apprentice, never actually someone that's working for an apprenticeship company or provider. So that was actually really exciting for me. And it was just, they trusted me and they actually knew I was an apprentice, and they liked that even more because I was someone that was experiencing it. So that was definitely a really big step for me. I really enjoyed that. Something I'd say is more challenging is in technology, there are lots and lots of changes that happen very often. So although you don't need to know every single thing that's happening in the industry, I think one big challenge for me is how fast-paced everything is and how much there's new releases of technology, there's new advancements, and kind of keeping up with that. So although I really want to know all about all the new things that are happening, I think it's important that you kind of know the high level of different things that are changing, and you stay on top of that. But yeah, you don't need to know every single thing, but I'd say that's a big challenge. Tech, it's very fast paced.
And then I suppose, Vivian, this panel is all about women in tech. So I guess looking into the future, how do you kind of feel about the future of women in tech? Do you feel like there is more representation coming? And then also, do you have any sort of resources, books, or like influencers on social media that you'd recommend people watching today kind of look up as well as they're kind of trying to find their own route into the industry?
So that's the first part. I think there's definitely more awareness for it. I believe there's more people aware of the opportunities there, especially women, knowing that they're more than capable. And I don't think the dominating fact of male being in the field should limit them. And like, I talk to women about it all the time. And I think I see it a lot. Maybe it's just how it's personalized for me, but I see it on my social media a lot of women celebrating being a woman in tech as well. And I'm seeing a lot of talks about that. And I do see that it's going to be equal in terms of like how much we could contribute to the tech industry as well. And I'm going to see more women managers as well, because more women mentors, more women just talking and helping us understand what it's like to give that perspective to the tech industry. Like in terms of podcasts, resources, I don't have a specific one in my head, but when I do want to see an update, LinkedIn I follow a lot of different people on LinkedIn. You could literally just type in like different networks and see what type of people are up to the latest news about it, because loads of people are so excited to share the updates about it all the time. I'm hearing statistics growing and all of that. So LinkedIn is the platform I see to see updates and resources about this type of things. But I don't have a specific person. I'm not sure if these two do.
Yeah, we can open the floor. Chanel, Zoya, do you have any recommendations at all?
Someone that I like listening to is someone called Brene Brown. She's really good, I'd say, for women. Maybe not so much technology, but she's someone that I'd say to listen to. Zoya, maybe if you have someone as well.
I can't really think of anyone, to be honest. I'm more of a whatever comes up on YouTube kind of person. So, but I'm definitely going to check out the people that you said.
Right, so I'm noting YouTube, LinkedIn, good vibes. I suppose that is kind of it from our ambassadors. Thank you so much for chatting to us today and like sharing your experiences. If you do want to chat to more of our ambassadors or learn more about all of the work they do, on the GetMyFirstJob.co.uk website, we have our ambassadors online portal where you can chat to our real life ambassadors, ask them questions about their experiences in the industry and any sort of niggling ideas or things that you'd like answered. So apart from that, thank you so much for answering our questions today, and I'll pass on to the next person.
The next thing I'm going to talk about is the different routes into technology. So it's one of the fastest growing industries in the UK. Computing, technology and digital occupations will most definitely be in demand for years to come. Outlined on this slide are just some of the different routes that you can go down. There's so many, as you can see from our ambassadors, they kind of have done different pathways, and they're using technology in different ways. So for example, just some of these routes, Vivian mentioned it before about project managers. So again, you wouldn't necessarily think project management is something within the technology industry, but project managers within IT oversee the development and installation of hardware and software systems. You've got cyber intelligence officers that gather information about threats to IT systems. Systems analysts look at computers, IT infrastructure and work out kind of how to make improvements. You've got UX designers who create website applications and software to meet users' needs. So that's just a select few of some of the pathways you can do. But as you can see, they use technology in a wide variety of ways. So yes, there's a lot to choose from when it comes to technology. Another thing to mention is obviously roles within IT were kind of way back when used to be just seen in large kind of IT corporations, but they're now basically in every organization across the country, whether that's small local businesses or national or even global organizations. So it just means there's a huge range of options that are available to you, depending on kind of what your preferences are, what your location is. You'll most likely be able to find the route that's right for you. And one thing is, it's not just kind of the big, like the big players in the tech industry, like Google, Meta, Amazon. If you want to do a career in tech, there's also opportunities available in the likes of financial organizations like PwC, telecoms companies like Vodafone or Virgin Media O2, even government departments as well, like MI5 and the government security profession. You don't just have to stick to IT companies to do a career in IT. And because of the endless options you kind of have, we really encourage you to explore the different options available to you to find the path that's most suited to you. So that's in a nutshell the different routes you can take, and as you can see, there are just copious amounts of routes. I'm now going to pass you over to Tracy from Firebrand, and she's going to tell you all about the qualification side of apprenticeship and kind of the role a training provider plays within your apprenticeship.
Hi everybody, I'm very inspired by the ladies that have spoken about their apprenticeship journeys today. It's very inspiring. I don't think you should have any doubts that you are doing exactly what you should be doing. Nice to meet everybody. My name's Tracy Goodenough. I work for Firebrand Training. Firebrand Training are IT digital training provider, and that's what we specialise in, IT and digital. Just to give you a little bit of background about me, because I class myself as a lady in technology, even though I've not studied any IT and technology. I left school at 16, went off and did some retail stuff with John Lewis, and anyway, then went off, had a family, and then found myself propelled into education from a sales perspective. And when I say education, I mean education with IT. So I'm self-taught, and I think I probably absolutely know everything I can about apprenticeships and boot camps as far as IT and digital. And I have very big conversations with very high level people, and I'm able to hold my own. And believe me, I still do get imposter syndrome occasionally. So it doesn't ever go away. But what it does, it gets better because you realise you do know your stuff. So it's just a point there. The other part of me is I'm a mum of 2 grown-up children. Grown children is a strange word, but they both went through the apprenticeship route. So for me, apprenticeships were the best route for both of them. And I suppose as a parent, I could see the pros and the cons of either university or apprenticeships. So that's enough about me. I'm going to go into a bit about what Firebrand are all about, and I've tried to put it a bit of a high level. So training providers. So we're all probably, if you're doing an apprenticeship, you're either going down two routes. You're going down a route that you're doing it through a college or a university, depending on what level, or the employer that you're doing your apprenticeship through is engaging with a training provider, such as us. So at the moment, I head up boot camps at Firebrand, but my background is apprenticeship. So I've worked in apprenticeships for quite a long time now, and I've seen things change and progress. And I think what we need to remember is that training providers deliver apprenticeships and boot camps, and they lead to sort of nationally recognised qualifications now. Years ago, an apprenticeship probably wasn't seen in the same light as the route to university, but now they're seen as a really good on-the-job way of gaining recognised qualifications. The thing to remember, though, is training providers are funded by government. We get our funding through Department of Education. The other thing to remember as well is that we are Ofsted inspected. So like schools and colleges are, we are put on the same rigour as an Ofsted inspection. So we have to meet that criteria. We're spending public money at the end of the day. So we are put through quite a rigour to make sure that what we deliver is top notch. Training providers, as a rule, tend to specialise in a specific area or maybe several areas. And as I've alluded to, Firebrand, we're an IT and digital skills provider. So all the things you've been talking about, Charlotte, about, you know, all those different job titles or careers, that we provide the apprenticeships and the boot camps for that. I think the main thing to think about is training providers offer a very flexible and blended approach to delivering learning. And most of the fact that training providers work with employers while you're doing your apprenticeship within the workplace. So they offer sort of a remote delivery, face-to-face, and a lot of self-study. If I can have the next slide, please, Charlotte, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, this is very text heavy and I do apologise for that, but I will talk you through it. So basically, what's the difference? So I think the main difference is that at college, you go to college after you've been to school normally, and college is going to be, I think one of the young ladies that spoke talked about, you know, having to put your hand up and it's a bit more regimented. I think when you go to college, maybe it's not quite like that, but we are back in an educational establishment. So most of what you do will be done on a day release or a block release with your study, and that's great, you know, it suits you if that's what you want to do. But the difference between that and a training provider is most of your apprenticeship work will take place within the workplace, where you'll be given your 20% of the job time to do your apprenticeship. So that's where training providers tend to then engage with you while you're in the workplace. There may be occasions when you're pulled out to do some sort of, you know, courses or some qualifications. But I think really I've probably summed it up there, and I don't know whether you'll be able to have these slides, but a little bit of the breakdown. But for me, neither, you know, I work for a training provider, but neither is going to be worse or better or whatever. I think you have to just go with what you think is the best thing, and it will very be dependent on where the employer is having those conversations, who they're engaging with to deliver an apprenticeship. Yeah, I think that's probably enough on that, to be honest. Okay, so what's that relationship between a training provider and an employer? So I've done this for years. I've customer engagement. I'm very much talking to employers all the time. So the training provider is there, obviously. I lost my track a little bit. See, we all do it. So the relationship between the training provider and the employer should be a two-way street. If it isn't, it's not going to work. You need a buy-in from your employer and you need a buy-in from your training provider to agree what that apprentice is working towards and what they are going to achieve throughout that process. So for me, that's about built upon trust, and it's about transparency, and it's about working towards the best outcome for your learner. First things first, working with that employer to make sure it's the right apprenticeship standard, or in my case, boot camps at the moment, to match towards the job outcome. So what is it that we're trying to achieve? What is it from the employer they want from this rounded individual when they finish their 15 months, 18 months, 2 years on the apprenticeship program? And also, very, very important, setting expectations. What's the off-job, or what's the off-the-job training? What certifications are involved, and what qualifications? And also delivery. How's that going to be delivered? How is the training provider going to work with the employer to make sure that apprentice is at the centre of everything you're doing? Because that's the most important thing. I've put commitment statements there and reporting. For those that are not in the know, commitment statements are what is signed at the very beginning of an apprenticeship programme, and that outlines the what's in the course, when it will be delivered, how it will be delivered, and when are we going to reach EPA, so that's endpoint assessment for apprenticeships. And also reporting, two-way street. The employer needs to be open and honest about what's going on, and is that meeting the requirements for the apprentice. Same respect, the training provider needs to make sure they're reporting correctly too. Okay, so I found this one a little bit strange, different standards within technology. I think what I've done here is chosen what I think at the moment are probably the most key areas that standards and boot camps and apprenticeships and what we're getting asked for and what we get the most people interested in. And I've put security there, and we all know that's going to be cyber security. I currently are running 3 boot camps a month for cyber security, and I'll just give you an idea. It's 20 people on each. We are oversubscribed every time. So people have a thirst for cyber security, and that's because we're all given that impression that, you know, that's the key thing. What I would say about that is it's great, but at the entry level, it is tough. It's a tough industry to get, you know, area to get into. So for me, it's about looking at all 5 of these and realizing that there's a need in every business, in every area, pharmaceutical, retail, wherever there lies an IT infrastructure, an IT need. So for me, these are the 5 sort of places at the moment that we're seeing the most interest in. I could have put digital marketer up there because that's another one, because we all know that marketing is key to how companies grow. And I could have put IT tech sales up there as well. IT tech sales is also another growing, but I think I put the first 5 that I thought were the most needed at the moment, or where we get the most interest, not just from candidates, but from businesses. Can you help with this? Can you look at this job spec? So it's about finding out what a job spec is, where it really lies within a company, because companies can have very different views about where they lie, and also working out what apprenticeship standard that relates to, and maybe what a boot camp relates to as well. In all those different standards that we offer across boot camps and apprenticeships, here at Firebrand, we actually embed vendor qualifications in all of those. So the idea is, as you're learning your apprenticeship and you gain your experience of your apprenticeship, you will be actually given the opportunity to gain those certifications along the way. And when I say vendor certifications, for those that were thinking, what? That means like the Microsofts, the Googles, the CompTIA, the Google, AWS routes. So for us, we embed those because it's really important for somebody to come out their apprenticeship, not just having studied their apprenticeship, achieved, that's fantastic, but actually give them the opportunity to be able to gain some certifications in the industry that they're going to be working in. And what that does is give you that extra added thing for when you are then, you know, progressing your career. Next slide, please. Okay. So different types of courses. So Charlotte sort of alluded to this. So I'm really sorry, I've put entry level 3. I know you talked about entry level 2, but for us in IT and digital, it tends to be at level 3, and it goes on to degree level apprenticeships. Boot camps as well, entry level 3 through to level 5, and that's our advanced levels. So what's the difference? So for me, apprenticeships, you know, you can be over the age of 16 plus, and I noticed there was a question that came in, and was there an upper level? No, not at all. Years ago, maybe. Now, no. It's a great way of you changing your career, you know, go for your dream. There's no upper level. The oldest person I've actually come across that did a apprenticeship was late 50s, and it led on to them changing their career at that age. So there is no upper level. The difference between apprenticeships will be for a period of time. They'll be from anything from about 13, 14 months through to 3-4 years, depending on what level apprenticeship you're doing. They are full-time, so give or take, I won't muddy the waters, but if we look at it as a full-time commitment, we offer boot camps. We offer IT and digital skills boot camps, which could lead into an apprenticeship. So boot camps are a 12-week, 1 day a week technical route. They come out with qualifications. They are free to anybody that wants to go on them, so that they're government funded as well. And the other thing about boot camps is at the end of it, there's a requirement by the training provider, hence me, because I head up boot camps at the moment at Firebrand, to help you find a job in technology, in IT and digital. And so we work with employers who are looking to place people at entry level job roles, or even higher up, depending on the level. So the differences as well, 16 plus for apprenticeships. Boot camps, you have to be 19 plus to go on and there's a few other criteria, but I'm not going to go into too much detail there. But I think for me, they both offer a great route into IT and digital. And what we have to remember at the moment is we are a country that are lacking IT and digital skills, and we have a very big gap. And these are great ways for you either to change your career, get into that. And for me, I'll give you a little bit of statistics. At the moment, we are currently running numerous boot camps, and over the last year, we've had a 45% uptake of boot camps from women, and we're very proud of that. We work exceedingly hard with all of our employers to look at female entry into these. Our apprenticeships as well are very much, you know, with that's our agenda as well, to help get women into IT and tech roles. I have another statistic for you as well for BAME. We are actually now at about 65% of our bootcamp intake is BAME too. So it's really, really good for us to work with employers that see the absolute benefit of embracing that within their structures. Yeah, that's me. I'm open to questions because I may think, I don't know, I might have covered everything, but yeah, I've been in IT and education now for too long, about 25 years now. And like the ladies that spoke before, I still have times when I think, oh, I'm the only female in the room. So I do absolutely understand that, you know, we still have a slight discrepancy, let's say, in female to male ratios, and may it continue to grow and change.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tracy. That was super insightful and informative, and hopefully that's given everyone a bit of a flavour for the kind of what an apprenticeship entails and from the qualification point of view, and yeah, kind of what things you'll be getting involved in if you are to go down that route.
Talking about applications, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to call on our ambassadors quite a lot, because who better to talk about, you know, the application process for a tech company than those of them that have already gone through it themselves. But obviously there's a couple of different steps as you go through and you start making your applications. Some employers advertise directly on their own website, or most apprenticeships can be found on the National Apprenticeship Service website, where you obviously click the apply button on there, you'll get redirected. Some employers will use an application form where you'll have to upload your CV and also fill in lots of questions and lots of information about yourself. Some are very, very simple, and you just answer a couple of questions and that's it, all done, and kind of good to go. And obviously there's kind of different needs from each employer as well. So as I said, some need a CV and a cover letter. Some employers will need you to complete some assessments to go alongside your application. And some employers will, ask you to kind of write personal statements about yourself. You'll be given sort of a set amount of characters to write information about you, and then that's just what you submit. Each employer is completely different. If you are really unsure in the application process, I always recommend that you just drop them an email. There's always a recruitment email address at the bottom of every advert. If you want to know what you're getting into before you go through and continue with your application, there's absolutely no harm in making sure that you find out all of the steps that you have to go through. And then obviously the next step then is generally to complete an interview. Again, this varies depending on each employer. There are so many different ways that you can be interviewed now. It could be a face-to-face interview, it could be a telephone interview, it could be a video interview where you're both on a video call and you have that interaction. You could be asked to record yourself answering some questions. You could be invited to a group interview. There's lots of different ways that someone can kind of ask you to answer some questions for them. And you could also be invited to an assessment centre as well. Now, assessment centres aren't just interviews. They do tend to be made up of at least one kind of one-to-one interview while you're there. It can also be, a group activity. It could be psychometric assessments, any kind of tests or anything that they want you to complete. You could be asked to do a presentation. Again, if you are invited to an assessment centre, generally the employer will let you know what you're coming up against. They're not going to ask you to come in blind. But if you are unsure or you want any further information or support, then like I say, always feel free to reach out to the recruitment team for the employers, and they'll be able to give you some hints and tips as well. So I'll come over to our ambassadors now then. Guys, can you talk us through your kind of application journeys? Obviously you've come from 3 different companies, so it'd be quite nice to hear from you all. Zoya, I can see you on my screen. Did you mind going first?
Yeah, so my experience with the application for Cisco, so there was the CV we had to upload at the start and some motivational questions, just more so about like why do you want to apply for Cisco and stuff like that. And then it was on to I think they're called like situational judgment questions. So it was sort of asking you like what you would do in this sort of scenario and stuff like that. It was online. It wasn't like under a time frame, but it was timed, right? They just took note of it. And then we had an interview. Obviously this was like in COVID time, so it was virtual over WebEx, and then had the assessment center. And within the assessment center there was another interview. You had to give a presentation on something on a scenario they gave you beforehand that you had to prepare on, and there was like a group task. So that was my main thing I had to do.
Amazing, thank you. And Vivian, do you mind sharing the process for you as well?
Yeah, the structure was quite similar. It started off with registering your interest and putting in your CV, answering questions why you want to join the company, etc. And then afterwards we got like a higher view interview, like where there was no person on the other end, and you could just kind of have pre-recorded answers sent off. Then after that, once you got accepted, I think I'm getting the order a bit wrong, but we had like gamification type of basically a phase where like they'll give you games to play, but you kind of like test like your logic and stuff like that, but in a fun way. And afterwards we got accepted to the assessment center, which was online, and there was also like an interview right after the assessment center, like with an actual person in the business, and then that's all it was. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. And then finally, Chanel, can you tell us how it was for you?
Yeah, sure. So when I was applying, it was during COVID, so it was all virtual. However, before it was in person. So I applied with my CV and I guess a motivational statement as to why I was applying for this apprenticeship. I didn't apply through the Salesforce website. It was through the training provider and their website. So I applied that way. And then after that, we had a telephone interview with someone from the training provider. So it was just, you know, what did you get for your GCSEs, that sort of thing, just confirming all of the information that you provided. And actually, I believe our entry requirement was 108 UCAS points. So yeah, they were just kind of asking you questions about, you know, why have you applied for this apprenticeship, that sort of thing, just as a way of screening people. And then after that, we had a interview with the apprentice manager, so someone that was working at Salesforce as the person that was hiring all of the apprentices. So we also did an interview of her on the phone. I remember at the end of that interview, she asked me a question about, it was a question of like, how many balls could you fit into a mini car? So it was kind of a question of like, how would you go through that thought process, that sort of type of question. So those questions, I'd maybe read up on that sort of stuff, because it's less about the answer you give and more about the way that you process that question. And then after that, I got put through to the assessment center. So that was one day long. We had to do icebreakers at the start, which is super fun. And then after that, we did a team building exercise with the people that we've just met online. So we were put into breakout groups. We were given a project where we had to work together to come up with some kind of product in technology, and then do the different parts of like marketing. How would you market it, the pricing, that sort of thing. And then we presented back to everyone after I think it was like, I can't remember how long we had, maybe an hour to do that project. And then after that, we had our group discussion. So we were given topics beforehand that we had to research. And then we were just kind of given that topic by the person that was in the room from Salesforce. And we had to discuss it and kind of debate and talk about how the research that we did and why we believed our opinion was right and so on. And then after that, we had an interview with our hiring manager and somebody else from Salesforce that was going to be a manager for us. At the time, I didn't know that they were going to be my manager, so that was interesting to find out in the end. So yeah, we did that interview. It was about 40 minutes long. So yeah, that was our way of applying.
Lovely, thanks, Chanel. And I think you touched on quite a key point there as well. You know, you don't always kind of apply directly with that employer. There are a lot of training providers. We see it on the Get My First Job website that will actually advertise the opportunities on behalf of the employer. And so you've got them that you speak to kind of beforehand, and then your application goes to the employer without you ever kind of submitting the application kind of directly yourself. You kind of, you know, go through that training provider and go down that route. I suppose another one to kind of touch on then, guys, obviously I've made a little note there at the bottom that your application journeys can sometimes take months before you kind of reach that final offer stage. Just wondered how long each of your journeys took, if you can remember, from when you kind of applied to when you got that offer. Zoya, I'll come back to you first, or Chanel, I see you come off mute.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think I applied around March, April time, and then the assessment centre was end of June. So it was, I would say, a couple of months to get through it. yeah, that was my experience with that one. But other apprenticeships I applied for, they took maybe like 6-7 months as well. So it really depends.
Lovely. And Zoya, how long was yours? Was yours about the same?
Yeah, so I applied in January and I got my offer at in the end of May. So
Okay, so quite a few months then from when you first applied. And Vivian, was it fairly similar for you as well? A couple of months between that sort of application?
Because it's a while back now, I think what I remember is that I got encouraged to apply to apprenticeships quite early, of the competition. But I think that was around like January, like March time frame, I think, yeah.
Yeah, lovely. And then did you all kind of start in the September time? Because I know that a lot of apprenticeships, especially the higher level ones, you obviously apply a lot earlier, but then you don't really start until sort of September that year that you've applied.
Yeah, my start date was September.
Yeah, the offer for me was like, I think a month or two before, and then it started in September, mid-September, yeah.
Lovely. And I'm going to throw a slightly awkward question out there. What was your least favourite part of the application journey? Was there anything that kind of really stood out to you that you really didn't enjoy or that made you really nervous?
For me, it was the higher view, like speaking to no one on the other side. Like you have to answer some questions and then realize like no one's listening in real time, and then it's recorded, so you don't really know how the person will react after in the future. It was a bit awkward at first, but I got used to it after some practice.
I'd probably say my least favorite part, it was probably the group part of it, mainly because when you've gone through that entire application process yourself and you've kind of prepared yourself, you're ready, you know kind of what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are and whatever. But when you're put in a group with people that you don't know, it's quite daunting because you don't know how people are going to react. You don't know if someone's going to be super controlling. So that's always probably the hardest part for me, because it's like you really don't know what to expect. Whereas, interviews, you can have practice interview questions, you can practice it. But yeah, that one's probably a little bit my least favorite part. Yeah.
I would say for me, we had to do something, present on like some Cisco solutions, so that was a bit tough just understanding that. But for me, I felt the group assessment was a bit easier for the Cisco one because there was 3 of us in a group and we were all female, whereas I had an experience with a different employer and our group assessment one was like 6 people and they were mainly guys and they were very dominant. So I actually found that, I know it's not about my company, but I actually found that one quite hard, especially to speak up. But I would definitely say you have to, because you might as well just stay at home or just not join. It doesn't matter how good you are on the other aspects. If you don't contribute, unfortunately, it doesn't help, even though you might be a bit shy. But yeah,
completely agree. I think the group assessments, they're never there to catch anyone out, and I think if anyone is going to get caught out, it is those people that go in and kind of dominate, because that then isn't, you're not demonstrating that you can work in a group. Actually, all you're doing is basically showing that you won't listen to anyone else's ideas or take anything else on board, which really, really puts employers off. So I think this is quite a big one in your application journey that will very often get overlooked, or, as you're kind of moving into that job hunting kind of time, you are opening yourself up and sending your details to lots of people who will most definitely look at you on social media. That is completely a given. Employers are going to be looking at the things that you're posting. Is there, anything that you've kind of posted previously that goes against their company guidelines? Are you sharing images that they wouldn't want kind of associated with their company? So I think as you kind of go through and you start thinking about making those applications, or if you're already in the process of making the applications, just make sure that you go back through your social media content. I know obviously like Facebook, they do kind of your memories every year. I take great joy in going through and deleting all of the ones from when I was 14, because they are not the sort of things that I would want, you know, my current employer or any future employers or any clients that I work with to see. Same with, you know, your Twitter and your Instagram, kind of go through everything that you can. Just if, you know, you don't want to remove anything, then make sure that your account and all of your posts are completely private, and that way employers won't be able to see them. Yeah, so any kind of personal accounts, things like that. Obviously LinkedIn as well. Make sure that, you know, you're connecting with kind of people on LinkedIn or sharing information on LinkedIn that is relevant to industries that you are looking at the moment. A big thing to do is usually, if you can, is try and, you know, kind of connect with the recruitment team as you're going through and submitting an application. For instance, you know, if you were to apply for Vodafone, they've got a full list of people that kind of work there at the moment that are within, you know, talent acquisition or early careers. Really good to get your name kind of in there. So you submit your application if you connect with them as well. It's just another touch point, another kind of reminder of you as you're going through. Another big one as well, one that I definitely come across working kind of within the recruitment field, is your voicemail message. A lot of people don't realise that their voicemail message is one that they put up at, you know, 15, 16 to make their friends laugh, and it's really not very professional. There are lots of ones that I have spoken to. I've left messages for that include swear words, pretending to say hello like you're actually there. That one is definitely my least favourite. If that is your voicemail, I would highly recommend that you change it. Because if you aren't speaking to the employer directly, you know, that's your first impression, or their first impression of you is that message that they hear. That's the first time they'll hear your voice, what you sound like, what you kind of have to say about yourself. So just make sure that you know, your voicemail message is always as professional as it can be. Just your name, sorry I couldn't take your call, leave me a message with your name and number and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And also, if you do have a voicemail, please make sure that you listen to the voicemails that are left for you, because there is nothing more annoying than leaving a voicemail about the reason for your call and then, you know, no one kind of getting back in touch with you. Employers won't tend to chase you lots of times. They will, you know, leave you a message and kind of move on. So it is then kind of up to you to return that call, find out that information, and kind of get yourself on the kind of in the employer's mind. Same again with email addresses. You don't really want to be applying for jobs with, you know, like a Honey Bunny 15 email address. Cute when you're younger, it's not really a professional email address to then use when you're applying for jobs. So unless it's, you know, your name and some numbers, we'd always recommend kind of creating a new email address if you are applying for jobs and your email maybe isn't the most professional, to either include your name and a couple of numbers, whatever kind of variation of it that you can get, or even creating a specialist kind of like job seeking email address. Personally, I would highly recommend personal job seeking email address, because you know, that way when you sign up to all of those websites that, you know, send you lots and lots of emails and tell you how many job alerts you're getting every single day, you've got them all in one place. They won't actually interfere with your personal emails. But then when you kind of go out and, you know, if your CV's sitting in front of an employer, you can put your personal one on there. So have the one that you sign up for everything with as like a jobs account, and then have your personal one on your CV, because it can't be kind of taken off of that unless it's directly by, you know, an employer or someone who's wanting to get in contact with you. And then as well, lots of employers obviously reach out to you by phone. As all of the girls said, you know, they all had kind of telephone interviews or spoke to someone on the phone before they kind of got through to that next step. So when you are job hunting, make sure that you answer the phone quite professionally. Just, you know, a simple hello. I've had quite a few times where people think that they know who it is that's calling, because they know someone who lives in the area that I'm calling from. And so they'll answer the phone as if I'm their best friend. And I'm like, oh, hello, is that James? Hi, James. It's not who you think it is. I'm very sorry about that. And it just kind of derails that conversation. So yeah, again, just, you know, kind of always make sure that every kind of communication that you could possibly have with an employer, just that you keep it as professional looking as possible. And you kind of are as acting as professional as you can within that kind of job hunting market. I don't know if any of our ambassadors kind of have any other hints and tips, kind of, you know, as you are going through that application process. Is there anything else that you would recommend? Is there anything that you personally did?
Yeah, honestly, what you said is absolutely true, because I had an experience like that as well, with not actually expecting. I actually almost lost my offer with Vodafone because I thought it was a dodgy number calling me. So it literally completely lost track. It was not in my mind at all to expect a call from them. So I ended up picking up, and I started off being like asking them why they keep calling. And then they actually said, oh, it's giving you an offer at Vodafone. And I was absolutely so shocked that, so I wish I would have heard this advice earlier, to kind of, if you're job hunting, kind of keep yourself in that professional frame when you're getting numbers from people, because I wish I could have been like that too.
Yeah. I'd say as well, maybe like if you do, whenever I used to pick up the phone, because typically I don't pick up the phone to numbers I don't know, I would, they'd say hi, you'd say hi, they maybe ask who they're like, am I speaking to Chanel? And then I would say, can I ask who I'm speaking to? Because then at least that way, if they're trying to sell you something and it's not the apprenticeship offer, then you know if you can end the phone call or stay on. So yeah, maybe that's something that you could do. I think as well, one of the things about your professional profile and LinkedIn and everything like that, you can find it's like the best way to get access to so many people that you might not have access to normally, even just by looking up the role like apprentice recruiter in the search bar, and finding the people that are at that company that do all of the recruitment for the apprenticeships. Like at Salesforce, I think our one's called the Untapped Talent program. So if you search that up in LinkedIn and search recruiter next to it, then you'll find the person that's recruiting for that. And then I would just reach out and, you know, ask if, you know, they can talk to you about it or have a call with them. I think that's one thing that I definitely did a lot, was reaching out to people at the company or previous apprentices at that company, that sort of thing, because it helps you find out more about the apprenticeship and you can decide whether actually it's for you or not for you. So that's one key thing. You might be applying to loads of apprenticeships, but for the companies that you're really interested in, I would definitely use things like LinkedIn, and just make sure your profile is professional, and you've got, you know, the right picture on there, the right information on there, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Lovely, thanks, Chanel. Yeah, I think, you know, like you say, it's really important, if you are kind of reaching out to those companies, that, you know, you make sure that your picture is professional. Not one that I remember to put on here, to be honest, but obviously a picture of you on a night out is possibly not always the best one. Obviously, if you can try and keep your picture looking as professional as possible. I know quite a few people that have much more relaxed pictures, so they're not, you know, a professional photo shoot. It's them out walking with their dog, or you know, kind of they're out, they're having drinks, they're having a good time with their friends, but actually the picture doesn't, you know, they're not in a nightclub kind of stuck to the floor and nearly falling over. It's, you know, they're sat, they're smiling, and it's quite an accurate representation of, you know, how they are as a person. And I think that's everything from us at Get My First Job. The only thing that I would like to say, obviously Vivian did mention earlier that she really struggled with that kind of pre-recorded interview where you just record your answers. We do actually offer a Get My First Job mock interview. which is the exact same format. So you just record yourself answering the questions. That will then get sent to myself and the team at Get My First Job. And we can then review that and give you some really, really detailed feedback. So if ever that is something that you do need, you can get in touch with us via our opportunities email address that I'll pop in the chat in a minute. And yeah, we'll be able to get that all sorted for you so that you can complete that.
So I'm going to pass you back over to Josh, and he'll be asking questions to Chanel, Zoya, Vivian and Tracy. So yeah, Josh, you want to take it away?
Hi, yeah, sure, Charlotte, thank you. So yeah, I'm just going to try my best over the next 20 minutes or so to kind of sweep in the last few questions that are coming in. As was mentioned, if you feel like you can answer the question, please feel free to take the floor. So the first one is coming from Kazaija. This one is about apprenticeship levels. So what kind of apprenticeship should what kind of qualification, should we have for level 5 or level 6 apprenticeships when applying to them?
Do you want me to take that?
Yeah, sure, that'd be great, Tracy. Thank you.
Okay, so it will depend. There will be a set criteria for level 5 or 6 as far as sort of capability, because when you ramp up to level 5 and 6, the area of study and what you're studying is going to be slightly different from an entry level, but it will depend on what apprenticeship you are applying for. It will depend on what the employer is looking for as well, because they may set their own criteria. So if you were to go onto the Institute of Apprenticeships and they list, so I don't know if anybody can put that in the website for the Institute of Apprenticeships. If you go into there, at the side there's a list of all the different, so the digital ones are there, you can click in and it comes up with all the, and you also can search by levels, so you can search by level 5 and 6, put in level 5 and 6, then you'll be able to have a look for ones that sort of, you know, you're interested in. If you click into there, it will give you a little bit of blurb about what sort of the criteria is and what you might need. But I would really recommend that if it's, you know, for me, it's about really if you've got, you know, a want or you want looking for an apprenticeship, it's about putting forward a really good, you know, opening sort of statement about yourself and why you want to do that, and your capability, and then most training providers will help you with that, with your application if you're working with a training provider. But also bear in mind that some employers, and I think the ladies that were speaking earlier on did allude to it, that some employers will have their set criteria as well, or assessment centres where they'll do that. So there's no set for this. It depends on what you're going for, what your employer is, what your training provider can help you with as well. So, and never feel defeated just because you might think you haven't got that starting level.
Yeah, that's brilliant insight. Thank you so much, Tracy. Just as a little signpost as well, we do have some resources on the Get My First Job website as well, that can kind of give you some advice and point you towards which level of apprenticeship might be best for you and what the entry requirements for each one might be as well. So there's a bunch of different resources out there that you can choose from, which is great. Secondly, I think we might be sticking with you, Tracy, for just an extra minute, but this one is from Aniko. Do you have any chance to break into this industry if you're not native in English? So I guess we can only really answer that from the perspective of being located in the UK.
Okay, so if you're located, you know, if you're living in the UK, then you can apply for an apprenticeship program. If you're talking about I suppose, yeah, okay, great, you're located in the UK, then you can apply for apprenticeship. You do need some eligibility requirements, but yet again, it depends on what you're going for and that sort of thing. So best to sort of, it's a hard one because training providers will work and employers will work with you, but there are set criteria for government to fund certain aspects of you know, if it's government funding, then there are rules and regulations for that. So without knowing your complete circumstance, it's a little bit difficult for me to answer that. I would suggest you perhaps go and look for some apprenticeship vacancies, and start going down the route of engaging with either a college or a training provider, and they'll be able to give you the help you need to see whether you are eligible. But never say never. Never say never.
As Justin Bieber once famously said. So we're sticking with an eco, but this one is for you ambassadors. So it reads, are you self-taught apprentices or did you study at uni? So I guess this kind of ties in with the question of apprenticeships versus degree apprenticeships.
So I would say that my apprenticeship is a degree apprenticeship. So that basically means that we're studying for university degree for 3 years whilst we're doing our work. So we do 6 weeks of working and then we do 1 week of university. In terms of, I guess, like self-taught, research beforehand or training beforehand, I'm not sure if maybe Zoe and Vivian were, but for myself, because I didn't have any coding experience before, I wasn't self-taught. It was just kind of, I've been taught that stuff through my apprenticeship. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely know people that came from different routes. So someone that did 1 year at uni, dropped out and came to the apprenticeship. And I know there's some people who also came from a gap year, knowing that, they coded so much within their gap year, went straight into an apprenticeship after sixth form. I know that there's so many different experiences coming into it, but personally, I came from sixth form, went straight into doing a degree apprenticeship like Chanel, and that's my avenue for getting into it as well, just learning from sixth form.
Same for me.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Ben, I'm going to couple 2 questions together just for the sake of time. Natalie and Christina ask pretty similar questions, and it's in relation to like the ages of apprentices. So what are the kind of age ranges typically of apprentices? Are there graduates and older females in particular?
Yeah, so for my apprenticeship, I started a year after sixth form, so I was 19. But I know with because I have a university time as well, where I'm mixed with other people and other apprentices from other companies as well. So there are people on my course that are, same age to me, or they started after sixth form, or even they've got, I know someone that had like 3 degrees. They weren't related to technology, but they were related to other things like English literature. So she is, around 40 years old. So I've met actually quite a few people that are older than me, and they've gone through different paths in their life. They're graduates, but in something that's not related to technology. So yeah, there's a varied age, but actually with my cohort, a lot of us are the same age. Yeah.
I'll just add to that. Josh or Joshua? Does it matter?
Josh.
Yeah. Okay. I think what to bear in mind is anything that you've done as pre-learning. So if you've done a degree in something else, there will be maybe some crossover, so there will be some consideration when you go on an apprenticeship program to how that might affect the length that you're on the program or what's delivered. So there's no higher limit or what you've done before. It's about how that affects what you might be learning or going to study. So I think that's the only consideration. Age-wise, it doesn't matter what your route in there is, it doesn't matter either. It's just to bear in mind that if you've done something previously, it could have an effect on what is available for you as far as program or what the content would be.
Yeah, I guess that kind of nicely ties in with a question that Umrao had, which was what apprenticeships are available for people who already have a master's degree. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can apply for an apprenticeship if you do have a degree, but you can't complete one in the field that you're already qualified in. It has to be different.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to touch, that's the same with boot camps as well. You can't really go on a boot camp that you've already got qualified in, because you have to show that you've learned and your progression and that sort of thing. So yeah, you're quite right, Josh.
Great. And then I guess, speaking of boot camps, can you apply to the boot camp with pre-settled status if you're in the UK?
As long as you've got eligibility to work in the UK, then there's no problem at all, because the focus of boot camps is to find you a role at the end of it. So yeah, as long as you have eligibility to work in the UK, you're perfectly fine.
Great. And where are people actually able to access these boot camps if they wanted to?
Okay, so boot camps are available through various training providers, but if you wanted to investigate one through Firebrand, you need to go onto the Firebrand website, and there's a button there to register your interest. However, if you go onto the .gov, because I'm trying to be inclusive here, if you go onto the government website and put in boot camps, you put government boot camps, it'll come up with a whole host of information about there, what's available, and probably a list of providers that can offer you a boot camp status route in. So yeah, just those sort of links really.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for the answers. I think that's all of the questions we've kind of caught up with. So unless anybody has any last minute quick fire questions that they wanted answering in the comments, feel free to put them in now, as we do have a little bit of time left. And maybe while we're doing that, does anybody from the panel today kind of have any final thoughts they'd like to share? Any last pieces of information or advice?
I'd just say, just go for it, and you won't lose anything from applying to apprenticeships that you may not know about. Make sure you do your research, and just go for it. Reach out to people that reach out to us, even apprentices, find out about their experiences, and also look at all the resources. There's loads of resources on the Get My First Job website, so that's another thing to look at too.
You're a star.
Sorry about that. My advice would be what you don't have in experience, make up in passion and commitment. So if you feel like, oh no, I don't, for example, know XYZ, just have the passion to learn about it. Like I mentioned earlier, through courses or just, YouTube videos, and just having that commitment, having that on your CV is definitely enough to put you through, and especially put you above others, because I think it's more important for employers to see your commitment and your motivation to learn something outside of school, for example, rather than doing A-level computer science like I did because I had to do it because I chose it, but it doesn't really show my passion going outside of what I had to learn. But yeah, that's my main advice.
100%. That's so important, and I think rounds it off really nicely in that skills can be taught, but your behavior, how you conduct yourself, and then also the determination and passion that you have on the inside is just an innate part of who you are, and will really help you not just stand out within the role, but then also help employers kind of be attracted to you throughout the recruitment process. So that's great. And we also had a comment thanking the ambassadors for sharing their experience. So thank you so much for doing that again. You're making some people feel empowered that they can also now apply for apprenticeships too, which is great to see. But on that note, I think that might be all of the questions.
Can I say one more thing as well?
Oh, go ahead, please do, Vivian.
Because I think it was good advice when my teacher told me about Eventbrite as well. Because Zoya's right, it's not just the subject as well, having on CV, it's probably what you do to show your passion. I remember there was events out there that they were doing hackathons, and they were doing some talks as well. Because I was just curious, and I just wanted to know what people up in the business talk about and what they want to share. I kind of just went there in my spare time with my friends to see what they were talking about in that sector. And I kind of put that in my CV as well and spoke about what I learned as well, just to show that I am actually interested. So you could think about that too, if you're not sure how to show passion. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's really useful. And I think those like types of hackathons happen not just within the UK, but all over the world as well, wherever you might be based. So really useful ones to look out for.
We will, after this event, we will be sharing around an email as well, which has got a bit of a candidate pack. So it's a bit more information about our ambassadors that have obviously joined us today, a little bit more information about the companies that they work with. There is also going to be a resources document. So, you know, like Vivian just said, those hackathons, things like that, the free coding courses that you can do, we've gone through, we found some of the best ones, pop them in a little document for you so that you've all got access to those. And there's also information in there about the employers who advertise their tech related roles on the Get My First Job website that are either live now or will be live in the next couple of months as well. So lots of information in there for you too.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, I mean, if we've hopefully we've inspired you all to want to work in a career in technology. As Danny mentioned, we're going to be sending out an email tomorrow with loads more information. But if you are ready and raring to go, please do visit our website at the moment. There are a lot of tech roles available, some of which are kind of alive at the moment. Some might have got deadlines coming up soon. So yeah, have a little look and see what takes your fancy. But hope you found this event really insightful and like I said, inspiring. I want to say a massive thank you to our panelists. So Zoya, Vivian, Chanel and Tracy. And yeah, I hope you've all found this a really informative event. So we're finishing a little bit earlier so you can all have your dinner. But yeah, hope you all have a lovely evening and we will hopefully speak to you all soon.